Welcome to the Game and Gadget Podcast. Hi, I'm James Woodcock from Pixel Refresh, your host of the Game and Gadget Podcast, and as always, or at least pretty much every Game and Gadget podcast we've done and are about to do, I have my co-host Tony Warriner, founder of Revolution Software, writer of the History of Revolution Software. I think that's an apt title for now, maybe, Tony. We can talk about that a little later. Thank you for joining me yet again.
It's nice to be here, James.
So, I thought we'd start with a joke.
A joke?
A joke, yes, this is risky business, this is. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
The Nest Doorbell battery version, which I have just purchased.
Aha. Does it work?
It does. I will quickly screen share, just so we all are on the same page, as it were. So, I've been thinking about getting a doorbell for quite some time. As in a smart doorbell. So, of course, the house had a classic doorbell, which was nothing more than a button on the door that had a wireless trigger. So there was a unit plugged into a socket to draw power, and the little bell unit was in there. But I think it was getting on in life. And when one of the neighbours were ringing a doorbell, ours went as well. So I thought, okay, it must be a frequency thing. So I changed the frequency, and it was still happening. And I even know which neighbour it was to sort of compare. And then it was ringing all by itself. Then it wasn't ringing at all. It had a really weird battery that was incredibly small. It was like AAA, but even smaller.
I think I know the one, yeah.
Yeah, it was just old, Tony. It was ready for an update. It was yearning for a change. And of course, someone who's into technology, I thought, I've got to get a Google Smart One. And the reason I went with Google over someone like Amazon, and there's certainly plenty of options out there, but I think Amazon's its probable main rival. I don't have that many Amazon things. I went the Google route. So I did try Amazon years ago, and it was okay, but I found that the Google one just worked better for me and for what I used. So once you're in that ecosystem, you kind of have to carry on with it.
I suppose so.
So I ended up getting the Nest Doorbell. And the reason I went for this one is because it's the battery edition. This one came out, I think, just a week ago. I got it on the day of its release. And what drew me to it was the fact it was a battery edition. I couldn't have it wired up. It was too much for installation costs and mess.
Yeah, that sounds hard, doesn't it?
It does. And I thought, well, if they ever do a battery version, as long as the battery life is of a decent length, then maybe that's the time.
Yeah.
And this one purports to be about 2 months on battery.
2 months? It's not... yeah, I mean, that's like the least it could be, yeah.
It's still not a lot. However, it's just enough to wet my whistle. So you can still plug it into like a main wide system. But like I say, I don't want to go through all that extra expense, all that mess, holes in the walls and whatnot.
Yeah, drilling and wires and...
yeah, it's
you don't want that.
not great. So this battery one, even at 2 months, and at the minute it's purporting 4 weeks charge remaining after just a week. So if it gets to 2 months, I will be impressed. But I had to do some configuration. I'll go into a minute.
Is it press related? Like if you have lots of visitors, then it's, you know, it's like you're pushing your luck and batteries used.
So this is the intriguing thing. So I thought with it being a battery version, it would therefore only do any fancy recording once the button was pressed, but it actually works by the sensor. So even if you walk up to the door, it will turn itself on. It gives a visual indicator to everybody like someone has approached the door, so they see that a camera has engaged even before they've pressed the button. So that's got to be quite a good deterrent as well.
Yeah.
And that's recording to the cloud, which is quite handy.
Yeah.
So it's not constant recording. So the previous one Google did, where it had to be wired in, it would be continuously recording. You could have up to 30 days stored with, I think it was £4 to £5 a month.
Yeah, we have that. We've got two internal Nests here.
Oh, there we go then.
There's one, if I can do it, there's one above there, and there's one on that, next to the telly there, facing up the corridor. And it's with mixed results, it has to be said, but I'm paying the £4 a month to have it recorded, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I only dipped my toe into it, so I got the large Nest display, which is nothing more than a fancy photo slideshow. It just happens to be voice controlled as well, where you can say turn on the lights and all the rest of it.
Right. Yeah.
So I've got Philips Hue as well. But for the doorbell itself, it seems to work absolutely fine. And the reason it was running out of battery so quick, and it said I only had a few weeks left of charge, was because it was literally the main road isn't that far from the door.
Oh, okay.
So every child that walked past, every dog, every car, it was triggering, lighting up, recording it, and then shutting down. So it had probably lasted a week on a single charge if I'd left it as it was. So luckily you can set a zone to say, right, I just want to record anything that comes into this area. And of course I've selected the front garden. And now it's going up in how long it says it will be able to stay on this charge. So hopefully I'll get a month and a half minimum out of it in the end.
Well, you would hope so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Indeed. But the odd thing was, I think on the older one, it was more of a widescreen kind of video aspect ratio. So you saw quite a width of the garden. This one concentrates more on the vertical. So the idea is if someone's carrying something, or there's small children walking up to the door, you know, if someone visits with a dog, or maybe a cat even, then you can see them because you've got that vertical instead of the wide. And you don't lose too much information from the sides, and I don't have a big front garden, so it's still as secure anyway. But the actual intelligent features are, if they press the doorbell, not only has it been previously recording anyway because it sensed them, but it rings the phone app. The Nest display then turns on with the video footage, which is quite nice.
Right.
And you can respond and speak to them either from the phone or from the Nest display.
Right.
So conceivably I could be in another country.
Yeah.
And answer the door. At least by voice, and saying, oh, could you leave the parcel with the neighbour, please? Or, sorry, not today. I do not want your super rates for electricity today. Or whatever, double glazing, conservatories. You know, all the people that would normally come to your front door, we'd want to say, not today, thank you. You have that without even going to the door. You could do it all from the comfort of your chair.
Yeah, if it works.
And it does. And it does. And the reason I know it works is because, unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, I somehow managed to pick up COVID.
You did?
I did, yes.
No way.
Yes way. So, the reason I didn't tell you sooner, Tony, because I wanted the live reaction on the show. But yeah, it's been, even though I've been double jabbed, the symptoms were certainly flu-like, shall we say, and headaches and coughing.
Blimey.
Tiredness. Oh, my bless her. Got out of it with just losing her taste for a bit.
Yeah.
But I got it pretty full on symptom-wise. So if I hadn't have had 2 jabs, I dread to think how bad I would have been. So thankfully I did get that. But certainly for answering the door and not wanting to go anywhere near a person, because legally you're not supposed to be anywhere near, you're supposed to be self-isolating.
Yeah.
It came quite in handy.
Yeah.
And
big result then.
Yeah, exactly. The timing is everything. So we were getting a bit low on food one night, and my wife fancied takeaway. So I thought, great, we'll have takeaway delivered. We'll test out this doorbell. Because, by the way, The day the doorbell arrived, 3 people had knocked at the door, and the third time was with the doorbell. Once I installed it, no one knocked on the door.
Yeah.
It was like everyone decided, we don't need to knock on their door. That's it. Just walk past, post straight through the letterbox, no deliveries. I wasn't able to test the thing. So I thought, okay, if we're going to take away, not only do we get some nice food tonight,
They've got to press the doorbell.
Someone's going to test the doorbell. So about 15 minutes after ordering, this nice person came to the doorbell, pressed the doorbell. I said, thank you very much. If you could leave it at the door, that'd be fantastic. They trundle off to the car, drive off, bring the food in, open it up, and within a few minutes realised this is not our order. And of course, I know I've got COVID. My wife's got COVID, and we've just been touching all these bags and stuff. So I thought, well, I can't even give it back to him.
Can't give
and
it
lo
back.
and behold, 2 minutes later, the doorbell went on again.
Well, that's good.
It is. I got fully tested that day. So I answered the door again, and I said, did you pass us the wrong food perchance? And he says, yes, sorry. So I said, well, I can't give you the other food back because we've got COVID. And then he said something inaudible. So I went to the door, but luckily he was already standing at the bottom of the garden. He'd left our actual food by the door, and he said, can I have the other food back? I said, well, no, we're self-isolating. I can't do that. He says, well, don't worry. Pass it to me. I just need to show the people their food, and then I'll chuck it away. I said, no, that's completely irresponsible. I can't do that. I'm self-isolating. If I pass you this back now, I'm potentially passing on COVID. So after that discussion, he went. And we had 2 lots of food to what we originally ordered. So we had a good few days' worth of food. That was nice at takeaway. It turned out to be the bargain of the century when it comes to takeaway food, which isn't particularly
whose was
cheap.
best? Your original order or the COVID special?
Oh, definitely the original. Well, the order remade was definitely the best.
Fair
it
enough.
had mayonnaise on chips or something. It was a bit weird. But still, it was an extra meal we weren't expecting. But that isn't the end of it, Tony, because what I didn't realise, there was more to this conversation than I realised. So, me being nosy, I thought, oh, I'll just see what it's recorded, what the quality, the video and the audio quality was like. And I could literally listen back to the whole conversation, including to when I was answering remotely through the phone. And what I didn't realise is the second time they came back, they rang the doorbell, and there was a pause for a few seconds, and then he let out the F-bomb really loud. So that was in the recording. So my very first visitor to my doorbell dropped an F-bomb.
And now you know about it.
And now I know about it, because I
Maybe
didn't.
everybody does that.
Yeah, so in modern times, folks, if you're going to ring the doorbell or even get close to it and you see it light up, you are being recorded. So if you're going to see friends and family and you're going to talk about them, don't do it.
Of course.
At least unless if you're going to talk about a surprise like an upcoming party, or you're going to say, I can't stand visiting Uncle Phil while we're here, don't do it. Because the chances are these days you are being recorded.
Because usually, well, not usually, but I mean, it has been known that you visit someone and like you make a last minute promise on the doorstep, like you say something along the line, oh, we'll stay for an hour, then we'll find a way to off, We'll make our excuses and get out of it real quick, and all that will be recorded.
Exactly. That's why I do miss having a dog, because the running line was, oh, the dog will be cross-legged, we'd have to get back now. Sorry. But then we got rid of all the pets, and it's like, well, what do we say now? We've lost our excuse. So, yeah, generally, I'm really happy with it. I've not had any problems like technical failures or it not ringing or it not recording. The pretty nifty feature is it can actually identify people. You can train it to say, this is my wife, this is the postman, this is the regular Amazon delivery guy, whatever. So when they press the doorbell, it actually announce, your wife is at the door.
You should give her a key, really, you know.
I should, but, you know, I wanted to ring the doorbell.
You're taking it away.
No, she has her own key. Just for anyone concerned, she definitely has her own key. But still. So, yeah, it works great. And,
I mean, that sounds...
it's nice knowing I've got that extra bit of security at the front of the house.
I mean, the interesting thing about that is you've got face recognition and stuff in your doorbell, but I mean, we've got Nest cams that are now, you know, I think they were like, one of them was bought when it was Nest, and the second one was bought probably after it got sold to Google. But you know, it's all part of Google. You set it up through the hideously complicated Google system, but it's not giving us clever stuff like that, and it's pretty. It's pretty hopeless, I would say, because it's giving us alerts like it's saying we've seen someone at the door, like or we've seen somewhere in room 1, like in the corridor, and like you read this and you go someone, like someone means person. That means we're being burgled at this very minute. So you know you're like scrambling to get the live feed, and it's really slow, and it doesn't work very well. It's one of the worst. This is why I'm surprised your doorbell thing pops up straight away, because it's really slow to get into the live feed of the Nest cams, and it's all the same thing, isn't it? I think, and you get there and it's like there's no one there at all, and like the cat's walking around, and it thinks the cat. I mean, yeah, I mean we might call the cat a someone, but Google shouldn't. Google should, you know, they got this great AI they're always telling us about, but they can't tell the difference between a person and a cat. That seems a bit weak to me. So you know, that took us a while, and then it's got this thing whereby it's got auto away or something it's called. So if like both we both link our phones into this thing, and then if both phones are off the Wi-Fi, it knows that we're both out, and it starts filming constantly rather than having a sensor or something like that. But it always stops working, and it stops working now. So one of us goes out and it goes, seen someone. It's like, yeah, that'll be the one of us that's still at the house, you know. So to me, I mean, it does work. I mean, it fulfills its, like, if we got burgled, we really would have a nice bit of film of whoever it was. But there's a ton of aggravations around it, you know. So I'm kind of thinking, should I just swap the whole thing out and put something on the Apple system, you know? But I haven't looked into it, so I haven't done it yet. It's kind of not bad enough to warrant that, you know.
Yeah, I have to say, given Google's experience, their home app, by trying to just throw everything in there, is just awful. I mean, it's usable, and you can get there, but I'd imagine if it had its own app, it'd just be there straight away to select whatever you need, instead of having to go into your devices. Find a device from your long list of devices, select the device, wait for it to load up, and it's 3 or 4 clicks before you even get to the bit you want.
Back in the Nest days, it was a much simpler app. You know, it was much cleaner, and then it got sort of sucked into whatever they call it. Is it Google Home? Do they call it something like that? Yeah. So I'm surprised yours is responsive, actually, because the way this works, you could never run a doorbell off this. It just takes too long to bring the live feed up, you know.
There's a short delay, but you'd have to be probably like Usain Bolt going to the front door to avoid being captured on it. But there is a little delay, but there's nothing like serious where you'd miss anything. But I feel your pain, because the Nest display, the bigger one, had a camera on it, because I don't think it was ever designed to be in a bedroom like the smaller ones. So you could use that potentially to be, like you say, it goes by your phone. If you've left the house, it then is activated, and it will sense things, and it will let you know if it's a person, or it's heard a dog barking for some reason. I guess that's a useful metric if you're being burgled, if the dog is barking. But it may not be your dog. It may pick up a neighbour's dog or a dog walking past, but still, it's got this facility. But the thing it kept going off on mine, I've got kind of a living room, and then there's a dining room at the other end, and then a nice double door to go out into the back garden. But the trouble is, every time there was a big change in light from that back door, even though it's quite a way away, it would trigger it and say there was motion. Yeah. So when I first got it, I was like so nervous because I was getting all these notifications. There's motion activity in your living room. What? There shouldn't be. But it was just the light.
Yeah, ours was doing that as well, but that stopped. Actually, it doesn't do that anymore because the clouds. You know, we're on a road, and at night you get the car lights flashing across the top of the ceiling, and the sun as well. As you say, the clouds. If it suddenly got if a dark cloud went over the sun, then it would come dark and light real quick. You know how you see that sometimes, and yeah, that would trigger it. But that's gone away. They seem to have fixed that one.
I haven't tried it for a while. I'll have to risk turning it on.
So do you not have any other cameras in the house?
I have one inside, one at the front doorbell, and I've got one pointing out the back. But that's not part of Google. I've actually got that on a Raspberry Pi. There's a nice bit of software called Motion Eye. And you just install that, connect it to like a USB camera. So I've just like Bluetooth that literally to the inside of a window. And it just points to the back garden. So kind of got all the house covered in one respect, and that'll even save those recordings to Google Drive. So it hasn't got the smart features, but I can still set zones. I can still say how much I want to record. And it's got nitrogen as well.
You're an Android person, right?
I am an Android person. I wasn't always, but I have been in the last few years or so.
And see, you've missed out then on the joy that is Apple tags. Now those things, you know, those little things that came out recently.
Yes, are you using joy as sarcastic, or is joy, these are actual immense satisfaction?
Yeah, no, we're talking about Apple World now. Everything's great. I mean...
For those who are listening to this, I've just pulled a face, but carry on.
Everything works really well. So that was more sarcasm. But the tag things, though, it's like, everyone bought one. When they came out, you could first order. I mean, literally everyone I know who's in the Apple ecosystem bought one of these things just to see if it actually worked, you know. And it's pretty good, actually. I mean, it's a tiny little thing. The battery lasts a year or so. You click it near your phone and it goes, oh, hi there, I'm a new tag, I'm yours, what do you want to call me? And, set me somewhere and I'll do what I'm supposed to do. And it really does. And you click a little app, you got the whole Find Me thing in the Apple world, so it tells you where your phone is and your computer and your iPads, all your devices are on Find Me if you set it as such. So if someone steals them or you forget where they are or lose them, or you can always track them down, you know. So and the tags just appear as extra things in Find Me. So I thought I'd stick one in the car, because occasionally.
I thought you were going to say the cat, but go on.
Well, I would do. If the cat had a collar, it would definitely have an Apple tag on it, but it doesn't leave the house, so it's probably
pointless.
Probably a bit of overkill there. But I stuck one in the car. So if you I've never actually lost my car, but if someone stole it, then I would be able to track it and stuff. So that would be fun. So anyway, every morning I check if my car has been stolen, and disappointingly, it's always still there.
How awful!
Yeah, it's always there parked. But what's amazing is that the way it works, as you will probably know. I mean, anyone who walks past it within a certain distance with an Apple phone, basically it says hi there, and Apple passes it up to the network and gets logged, you know. So if you're in the wilderness somewhere, then presumably it wouldn't work because there'd be no one passing with an Apple phone. But it's surprising how firstly how far it must work. It must work like 30 meters or so right through the building, I think. Like if you went around the other side of the building, walked past, the one that sat in my car would talk to an iPhone half a street away, through a building. You can check it any time of night and day, and it's always been seen, 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, 30 seconds ago. It's always, and we're off the road. It's a courtyard where no one goes, except people who are coming and going from the building, and it's not a big building. So it's surprising just how alive it is. It's really good.
Yeah, that does sound impressive. I mean, Bluetooth trackers have been around for quite a number of years now, with a limited success, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, they say they've got up to 10 metres and et cetera, but the reliability of actually being able to get that is touch and go at best.
Yeah, I mean, Tile famously did a big Kickstarter, didn't they, and built quite a big business, and I imagine they're suffering a little bit now because what I mean, the way that Apple's system works is, it's integrated into the operating system, into iOS and macOS pretty tightly, so it's very seamless, the way it works. So yeah, I mean, as soon as we go and travel again through an airport, it's going to be get another 3 of these and put them in all our bags and stuff like that, because I mean, they're so small, no one would find them. You could hide them quite easily, and you could sit there and when you're waiting for your bag to come through the conveyor thing, your luggage, like, you wouldn't have to worry about that, because you could just go, oh yeah, I know where it is. It's just round the corner. It's coming.
That is awesome.
Because
I find that moment of my life very stressful.
When you're last, like your bag is last, and like people are starting to go, and there's less bags. There's like a broken pushchair, and like nothing else is left on the conveyor. And like eventually, here's my bag. They found it and stuck it on. It's like 20 minutes of deep pain waiting for someone to come and tell you it's actually in, I don't know, Nicaragua or something.
Off with it.
Or someone's just stolen it, yeah. But anyway, with these things, that will all go away, and you just stick a tag on every bag.
That does sound very awesome. And I know Samsung's got some more advanced tags now.
More
Maybe
advanced,
I'll
you
try
say?
one of those.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
All these technology investments, it certainly adds up.
They do add up, don't they? But this is part of being an Apple. Basically, you just work to give them all your money and buy the latest stuff.
Yeah, I'm afraid when I got to iPhone 6S, I'd got a bit disenchanted with the Apple ecosystem. So I got out while I could, knowing if I stuck around for too much longer, it'd be far harder to leave. I always tried to remain certainly a little bit agnostic, in the sense of I didn't just use Apple, I used Google where possible. I mean, at that time, I was actually writing articles for all 3 platforms. 3 platforms: iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. Which, by the way, had a beautiful operating system. It's a shame they didn't actually get the apps to go along with it, but the operating system itself was very nice, and the Nokia phones were really nice.
Well, they really could. Then they could write business school lectures on how to screw something up, couldn't they? With Windows Phone, because you say it was pretty decent, and it would have been nice to have a third entry in that whole area. Now, I mean, the way I see it was that they had some money, they had billions and billions of dollars, and they said, the solution to all our problems is to buy Nokia. For whatever it was it 10 billion? Was it 50 billion? I mean, it would have been billions, right? Because, I mean, Nokia might have been in trouble or something, but I mean, it would have been billions of dollars. Yeah. But they didn't. They should have got those billions of dollars and given them to people like me, and we would have written games for the platform, and everybody else would have written their apps and their games and their applications, and there would have been a rush of software, and all the developers would have bought the machines, they would have started using them, they would have started talking about them, because they were nice machines, and there would have been the software. I mean, get those billions they spent on Nokia and give it to developers, and it would have solved the problem. I mean, maybe I'm being simplistic about it, but usually platforms fail because there's not the software, yeah. And they could have spent their way out of it. I mean, why did they need to buy a phone manufacturer to make slightly better phones or something? And brand the phones differently somehow. That'll solve all the problems. It's unlikely, isn't it? And
going from memory
history
here.
Showed it. Yeah, I mean that's how I read it. Maybe it's more nuanced than that, but it certainly looked that way to me.
Yeah, I think the number of phone manufacturers behind Windows Phone at that time was dwindling. And if they didn't buy Nokia, I mean, that was their last chance. It was really on life support. So buying Nokia delayed probably the inevitable. But I think it didn't matter. They could have thrown money at developers. They could have brought Nokia. They could have done all of those things. But still, they were 2 years late to the show. And I think by that point, Google had established themselves to a certain point in the mobile phone market, and so did Apple.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at all the manufacturers of old that suddenly almost disappeared overnight.
BlackBerry.
Exactly. BlackBerry was hurt very bad. They had some good enthusiasts that kept them going for a few years, but at the end of the day, the physical keyboard just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I wonder what's the reason they disappeared. I mean, they were very much enterprise, weren't they? But I mean, they were good quality little things. I mean, they were quite nice, weren't they?
I think Apple had some nice kudos. So if you're an executive, do you want to stick with BlackBerry, which you probably have for a number of years now, or do you want to try Apple with this new fandangled machine, which all the cool execs are using?
Mm.
And Apple just started targeting that market, and it started paying dividends. And what do you think that Steve Jobs was originally against having apps and an app store? I mean, that's just bonkers if you think about it now.
Yes, I mean, in a way, everyone misread it, but Apple were smart enough, I guess, to understand that the apps were what was really going to do it. I mean, as soon as it was opened up, it just went crazy, didn't it? I mean, it's just been stratospheric ever.
Stratospheric, yes.
Stratospheric ever since. I mean, I remember I've been thinking about this recently. It was like, when would it have been? 2008. Probably something like that, and I read an article, and it was by I think the people that did some game tap something or another or something, and he this guy was saying he was on an aeroplane, and like he saw 8 people. He walked, you walk up the length of the airplane, and you look at all the people, what they're doing, and he saw like 12 people with an iPhone, and he kind of got back to and said, "Look, this is going to be huge, because everyone on the airplane had an iPhone, and they're all running different apps. It's going to be massive. We need to pivot all our stuff onto iPhone." And I relayed this story around Revolution and said we should be thinking about this. It's going to be the next big platform, and people were going, "Yeah, let's see. I'm not sure." And I mean, it's laughable now, isn't it? Because I mean, it's just huge and changed the world completely. And I mean, Android itself was something very different, wasn't it? Until prior to the iPhone, and I think it just completely pivoted. And I mean, I would say it's kind of not a clone, but it's you look at an Android phone and you see iOS in it, because it's an alternative iOS in a way, isn't it? And iOS came first, so I mean that's a fair conclusion.
Absolutely. In fact, Android got into it was Samsung that got into a lot of trouble for making their icons look very iOS-like in the courts. I remember when it all started.
Well, that's just what Samsung do, isn't it? I mean, they for some reason, I mean, they've got the tech. I mean, they even build the iPhones, don't they, half the time? But they seem to lack
the displays.
They just lack confidence in their own ability. It seems to me. I mean, they could be slightly more unique, but they've always, yeah.
So I've just flashed my S21 Ultra,
which I read very good things about.
No, it's a great phone. The cameras are great in particular. I mean, that's certainly a long conversation to have, the phone itself. But in a nutshell, I love the 120 hertz display, and the fact that I have something close to what is camera zoom. Although you fix to 1 times, 3 times, and 10 times for actual proper optical zoom, and there's nothing really in between. But still, having that option of going 10 times zoom on something is just, I'll never ever use a standalone camera again, I don't think. Yeah.
No, it's pretty amazing what they'll do. I mean, I have the latest iPhone, and I should say I used to swap until very recently. I used to swap like alternate years between the latest. I mean, I was on Pixel phones for a long time, and then they kind of lost it a bit, and Samsung were the ones to get. I mean, I did used to swap iPhone, Android until about 3 years ago when I stopped working on Android for just for whatever reason. Like I just wasn't working on Android, so I haven't run an Android phone since probably 2016 or something. But I mean, as user devices, they're fine. But yeah, horrible to program games on. Horrible. I mean, Apple aren't much nicer, to be honest, but Android's probably the hardest, fiddliest operating system I've ever had to write a game for.
Oh, that's interesting.
I would say that, yeah.
Do you think it's got better more recently, or is that just the start when you're thinking, how can we get Broken Sword onto a mobile phone? Because I remember playing Broken Sword on a 3.5-inch screen on the iPhone. It was good fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, back in the day when you were kind of left to if you're trying to do it yourself, like natively, if you just go, let's just write a game and do everything ourselves and figure out how to do it, and it's actually quite difficult and especially if you're trying to do like a C++ engine so that it runs natively instead of, because it's normally they want you to write Java. So if you've got a C++ engine as we did, then the way you position that C++ bit in relative to the Java bits and how they all communicate and stuff. I mean, that was and then where's the OpenGL stuff that we also needed? That stuff was hard, and that was really difficult on Android. I mean, nowadays you would just use Unity or something which wraps all that stuff up for you, and you're writing a Unity game or an Unreal game or whatever, various other engines. Those things do that stuff for you. So now it doesn't make quite as much difference. But and the only things you're dealing with are App Store related issues more than anything. So it's all easier than it used to be. But back in the day, you go back to, I don't know, 14, 15, 16. Blimey, it was hard.
Well, that brings us nicely on to, we have questions from our audience.
Uh-huh.
So, in anticipation for our next recording, I created a form on the website, pixelrefresh.com, where people could submit questions, and we've had a couple come in. So the first one, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Janosch, has asked, where is British game development heading in terms of existing studios, latest titles, and maybe some indie devs? So where is British game development heading? So it seems as healthy as it's been for many years, but I guess the number of platforms isn't getting any smaller.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really follow the development scene particularly in a UK type context. I mean, I think it's fairly vibrant. There's plenty of people around. I mean, we don't have publishers like we used to. We used to have big publishers, didn't we, back in the day? You remember the 8-bit days. There was like Ocean and Imagine, and then there was who was it who did Lara Croft and all those things?
Core Design,
those sorts of people. I mean, I think that all those companies are either gone or now just labels, aren't they? And and you go back to all the Bullfrog type stuff and all the things that came from that. I mean, the developers are still there in small teams and stuff. But the publishing side is gone, I suppose. But that's not particularly important now. I think the UK is a great place to be a developer because we're just like a very creative country, aren't we? So there'll always be games being written here, and it'll always be vibrant. I mean, I sometimes go across to the Yorkshire scene in Leeds, where they have a group, an industry group. It's just full of developers, There's a thing called Gamma-Yo, which runs in Leeds, and everyone showcases the games, or it's just it's just a booze up and a chat really, as much as anything. But there's a lot of people there, and it's very vibrant. And that's the northern end. The northern end it was always like Sheffield, Leeds, Manchester. That was always a lot. If you go back throughout the history of gaming, I mean that whole scene was always very vibrant. I mean, Grand Theft Auto is the jewel in that particular scene at the moment. That's written in Leeds. Most people would think it's written in some mega studio in America, but it's it comes from Leeds, and that's a big developer. And there's a lot of that, and that is the UK, and we're always going to be good at being creative and making stuff, no matter what crazy Brexit stuff comes along and tries to destroy the economy. We'll still be creative. They can't take that away from us. So yeah. We'll always make games, yeah.
And I guess, I'm not sure if it's the best comparison in the world, so feel free to correct me. But going back decades, the concept of someone building a game in their garage computer, which is a terrible stereotype. I'm guessing some developer must have admitted creating one in a garage, and now everyone who's done it on their own must be coding in a garage, never anywhere else.
It's too cold here to do it in your garage, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's more a California thing, wasn't it? Because half the year you got the garage door open. It's probably very nice. But here you've got half the winter's going to be freezing, isn't it? So
yeah. But the idea is somewhat one individual could write a game and have it published. But I suppose now the equivalent is you could write an app, which just so happens to be a game, and have it on a mobile phone.
You could. It's come back. I think. I mean, for a long time that was like a bit of a joke, wasn't it? And you were kind of past your best if you were talking about. You were from a bygone era if you were talking about writing a game on your own or in a very small group. But I think that's actually come back, and that's probably. I mean, I'm a bit biased, but I strongly believe that's where the creativity is, in very small groups of people who work well together and communicate well together. That's always where great things came from and should continue to do so. And, we complain about them, but the Unities of this world make that a little bit easier because it takes away a lot of technical requirement you don't need to get bogged down with, and you're just left to be reasonably creative, and jam out a decent game, which to me is equivalent to the 8-bit days where the machines were so simple you couldn't get bogged down with technical stuff, so you were pretty much writing a game straight away. And if you pick up Unity, you can be equally just writing a game. So I think it's come full circle, and you could even be one person. I mean, I'm writing a game at the moment. I've got someone who's going to do some artwork, because you need someone to do artworks, and you need someone to do audio. You might need another programmer who's going to help you with certain things, shader stuff. And in my case, so very small, 3-4 people. Yeah, you could do something great. I mean, you could do Broken Sword with a third of the people that we had probably.
Interesting. So, sure. Our next question from Nikki asks, in terms of coding, what has been the easiest and hardest game you ever had to sort out, Tony? So is the hardest going to be one on Android, or is there something that surpasses it?
Yeah, just basically everything on Android. That's not actually true. When I did Android stuff, I did stuff for company called AI Factory, who do really great puzzle stuff for just for Android actually. So I had a few years working for those guys, and that was all Android stuff. But I used an engine called Cocos, which took some of the pain away, but not all of it. Revolution, did I do? Yeah, I didn't really touch much Android stuff at Revolution. I mean, there was the game, and then there was the Androidy bit. I think I did the Androidy bit. Not all that much, but the game was common. So no, the hardest stuff wasn't Android at all. I mean, the game itself is the thing. I mean, a couple of years ago, I worked on and I'm doing a little bit on it now actually, a game called Stranded Sails, which is on the Apple Arcade, and it is a PC Steam game, and our job was to make it run on Apple Arcade, so iOS. And the thing was, it was someone else's engine. It was a very big, and it is a very big and complicated game, and we had to basically make the UI work on touch. So they had drag and drop stuff, lots of menus and things, and it would be click the mouse and the thing would stick, and then you click. So you've let this is very dull. You've let go of the mouse, and then you're moving the thing, and then you click again to drop it. Well, pointing touch is very different, because you touch for a certain length of time, and then it kind of grabs itself. I mean, it's totally different. So we had to change the whole game to work well on touch, and deal with the fact that it was a really massive PC game where they didn't really need to worry about memory or processor speed, and to make it work on an Apple TV, which is yet another UI and a very limited device spec. That was really hard actually. We only had like 2 months to do it, me and another guy. That was phenomenally difficult. I mean, there were bits in that project when I thought, oh, you can't do this, it's too hard. So in living memory, that's the hardest thing. Beneath Still Sky was very hard as well. That was very hard because we were slightly out of our depth with it. It was too big a game for the amount of people we had, and it was too complicated, and we hadn't really designed it as such. We did our classic Revolution thing, which is the reason it's good is also the reason it's hard, and it just flowed out. It was, I mean, there was a vague plan, but it Steel Sky, it just came about. But that made it quite difficult because there was no great plan to stick to. It just kind of organically appeared, and there was quite a lot of monetary pressure on it and time pressure and stuff like that. And that was Steel Sky was the hardest Revolution game.
What was the easiest? Which is the one that flowed?
Ooh, that would be Broken Sword 2, funnily enough, because it came straight off the back of Broken Sword 1, and it used, like 95% of the engine and tools, so we had the whole process running. We just fixed a few things that were not quite as good as we wanted them to be, and the engine made them nicer. And then we started again, and we even had quite a good design for us. We had a remarkably robust design and an actual plan of what we were going to do. So yeah, it's an oft-told story, but it literally finished on the day it was meant to do. And we did a few things. I did the last day. I did that spider chair Easter egg, and then I said, okay, well, I think we're done now. And I stood up and said, this game's finished. Everyone stop. Whatever you're doing, and that was it. And it was to the day. Never a feat I've never seen repeated. And that was, when was that? 2000. 1996, 97, something like that. I've never seen anything go as smoothly as that one.
And just as you got it so silky smooth, Broken Sword 3 was 3D. So completely different rethink.
Yeah, Broken Sword 3 was fairly... it was okay. It wasn't too bad. In Cold Blood was pretty hard because it was too big, and we had some tech issues. We had a very ambitious tech plan at the beginning of it to do a voxel sprite, which did actually work at one point, but it wasn't practical. So we actually had a 3D, and it looked. Imagine George, because that project also started as Broken Sword 3, and it pivoted into being In Cold Blood for one reason or another. But if you imagine George, he's effectively pixel art these days. So we wanted a 3D. We wanted a 3D sprite so you could rotate George, display him at any angle, but he'd still be a sprite. We didn't want him to look polygonal, like, you remember, like PlayStation low poly characters, and you could see they had such a different look. They were so obviously polygonal back in the PlayStation 1 days. You couldn't get away from that. So we thought we'd be clever and just do a voxel version, and we had a friend of ours reckoned it could be done, and we spent a lot of time on that before we had to abandon it and do exactly what we said we weren't going to do, which was a polygonal character.
Well, I just want my next car to be called the Voxel Sprite.
The Voxel Astra.
I own a Voxel Astra. That's another story. But anyway.
It would be another story, yeah.
It would, yeah. George Stobart in his Voxel Sprite. Oh, there you go. There's the next story for Broken Sword 6.
I wish we still had that demo, because it did work. It really did work, and it was a solid sprite, and it rotated and it looked like a sprite. It was quite a thing to behold, really. But having a voxel on a black screen rotating round, and having 2 or 3 of them on the screen in an actual game was on a machine that everyone had was a slightly different thing, unfortunately. And then technology moved on, and now you can have as many polygons as you want, and you don't really need voxel is a stylistic thing these days rather than a technical thing.
Indeed. Well,
but yeah, that was In Cold Blood. That was hard. That was quite a tricky one.
Well, that brings the conclusion to Game Gadget Podcast number 9. Thanks again for joining me, Tony. Some fantastic insights, and I'm sure we have many more to come. But you really need to dig into... I don't know if those boxes behind you have any kinds of assets or anything exciting. But they must... I just feel that on your computer or in a file somewhere, Tony, you've got this gem of nostalgia yet to show us.
I probably have. I mean, I'm digging all this stuff out now for the book I'm writing. Interestingly enough, but I mean, I also in those drawers at the bottom there, there's like a dozen hard drives from the 90s and 2000s. I don't know what's on them. They came out of Revolution. I wouldn't know how to even link them up into a machine because they're like really old interfaces. You know, some of them would be SCSI. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, presumably someone very clever with hardware could get them up and running, and we could have a look what's on them. But I would guess most of them would fail on initial spin as hard drives. So, remember hard drives? They'd run for years and years and years, and you'd turn the machine off to move it or something, and switch it back on again, and the discs would go.
Yep.
Tragic death of a drive. Never just let them spin. Never. Once you stop them, that's it. So I don't know how many of those discs will now boot, but yeah, I've got them. There's boxes full of them.
I've got a USB IDE reader. I'm not sure if it has SCSI on it, but now I'm curious.
Some will be SCSI. What was the other one at the time?
IDE.
IDE, yeah, IDE. But that's probably easier to get one of those up and running again in an old PC, I would have thought. You probably just need the right board. The problem is you need quite an old PC as well, because the modern one wouldn't, the slots are different, aren't they, from what they were back.
I've got literally a thing where you can plug it in and it connects to USB. And
right.
It definitely supports IDE. Definitely supports the new SATA standards. SCSI I'm not so sure about, but I'm definitely going to check now.
SCSI was different. I mean, most of them won't be SCSI, but I do remember SCSI machines. There might have been some build things we're using SCSI. I don't know.
Well, I've got a Windows 98 machine, so we'll have a chat. And if we can relive and bring out some of the things of your past as part of the process, then obviously that's going to be a big win for yourself.
I mean, the thing about Revolution was we were terrible at archiving, and so much stuff has been lost. I mean, you got the games still exist, but we always lost the engines and the assets, mostly because it was we had the 8-bit mentality that you'd never look at it again, and also, there would never be like an iPhone in the future that wanted a port of a. We just never even imagined that would be the case. But also, our entire network would be set up for building one particular game, and when we started again, we'd need to either archive all of the machines and put them in an exact same. You need like a duplicate office, like duplicate everything, where the chairs were, what the network was, where the wires were going between machines, and just like duplicate everything, and then start again in the next office on the next game. Because you didn't do that, you wiped the machines and bought new ones, and everything got. It's like a machine, there was the In Cold Blood machine and the Broken Sword machine, which consisted of all of the machines in the office. And once you took that down, there was no getting it back again, But there'll be, on some of these discs, there'll be some assets, there'll be some sprites, some backgrounds,
Okay, we've got to figure this out, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, now you mention it, I've looked at those discs so many times and thought the best thing I can do is get a lump hammer and put them all out of the misery, and chuck them on the tip. But I haven't. They're still there.
Okay. Well,
I'll dig them out for our next chat. I'll have some to show you and to prove it's true.
But we're definitely talking about this. We're going to try and recover the data for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. This is Game Gadget Podcast number 9.